Hey guys, how's it going? So today we are going to go over variables, specifically strings and numbers. And we're going to just kind of go over like what a variable is, why it's important, and why you should use it. So let's jump into it. Boop. Okay, here we are at the same file that we had last time, where we have our print hellos. We don't really need these print hellos, but we'll keep them here using one of our comments that we talked about at the end of the last video. So we'll just comment this whole spot out, and then we will add a new comment talking about variables, and then another comment to talk about strings. That way we can just keep this file really clean so that if you want to go back and look at what we've gone over, if you're copying things down at the same time, then you can see exactly what we've done. To create a variable in Python, you can name it whatever you want. A variable basically is a key and it holds a value. What that means is that you can name a variable anything and you can give it a value that it will hold throughout the time you're running your program. And then anytime you reference your variable within your program, it will basically point to whatever its value is. So let's create an example here. We will create a variable called var1. This could be named anything. We could name this Jake, we could name this Sammy, we can name this anything we want, but we're gonna name it var1 for now. So you define a variable just by naming anything you'd like, and then you add an equals sign afterwards. I don't think you need a space here technically, but it just seems cleaner to me to add a space, just so it's a little separated. So the first variable we're talking about is strings. So you can define one of these variables by typing hello with a single quote, or you can also do hello, or let's make it a little bit more fun, friend with a double quote. So these are essentially the same. So one thing to note is that these strings have to always start and end with the same quote. So it can't start with a single quote and then end with a double quote. It has to start and end with the same type of quote. Great. So let's see here. So if we print out, we know how to print things already. We were printing out strings already up here, so we were kind of a little bit familiar with strings. But now we can just print var1 here. And what this is going to do is it's going to tell it to print, but it's going to tell it to point to var1. And when it's doing that, it's going to look at this and see what it equals. So when it prints this, this should now say hello. And if we print var2, it should now say friend. So let's give this a try. Perfect. I just scrolled up a bit. Perfect. We have hello friend. All right. So what else can we do with strings? Another thing we can do is something called concatenation, where it's basically a fancy word for adding two strings together, or two or more strings together. So for instance, you could say var3 equals var1 plus, meaning you're adding. Pretty simple. And let's add a string with a space here. So you can mix and match variables without variables, and plus var2. Now, if we print this var3 out, now what it's going to be doing is the value of var3 is now equal to the value of var1. So it's basically pointing var3 at var1 with an empty string, or with a string with a space in it, and also var2. So it's adding all these together. Now, if we run var3, let's see what happens. Now we get hello space friend. So this space is this one here, and var2 is friend, and var1 is hello. So that is called concatenation. Concatenation. Again, fancy word for just adding stuff together. What else can we do with variables? So let's just keep using var3, because you can actually continue to reassign variables, which is really cool. So you can keep using them however often you want. Typically, you don't want to reuse a variable everywhere within your file or within like your code, because it might be very confusing what the variable is when you're actually running your code. So if you run into a bug, you might kind of run into a number of bugs because you don't know what the value of your variables are. So you always want to have a good descriptive variable name, and you also want to have it reassigned, or you don't want to reassign it too often. So what else can we do here? var3, so we're just going to reuse this so that we don't have to go to var12 by the end of this. And let's do var3 equals var1 times 3. So if we print var3 here, we are now going to get var1 multiplied by 3. Oops, var1 multiplied by 3. So this simply means that whatever this is, we're just gonna get it 3 times. So we can see here, if we print, we get hello, 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 hello. So pretty simple. It's basically as if this was a number, but instead, because it's a string, it's just gonna make 3 of them. All right, say we want to get a specific letter from var1. So we know var1 is hello. Say we want to get the H. So the H is the first part of the string. So it's the first letter of the string. How can we do this? So this little square bracket is used to basically grab any index of something. So this will be used in lists later when we talk about lists. And for strings, this is also used to grab the specific part of the string. So you put in a number here, and it will grab a specific part. Now, let's print var3 here. What do we think we're going to get? We get an E. So why is that the case? So we have hello, but we got this, right? We didn't get the H, even though we put a 1 here. So the reason for that is because indexes, so anytime we have one of these square brackets, indexes are always, the first thing is always a 0. So it's actually 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So if we actually want the H, we have to put a 0 here. So now if we run, now we get our H. I'm not going to go into the history of why that's the case, to be honest. I don't know exactly why. I think it's a little weird too, but that's how it is. So another thing we can do with strings is actually get, similar to an index here, we can actually get a range of indexes. So say we want to get hello without the H, or hello. Hello. It's my terrible British accent. That was my British accent. Sorry. So one thing we can do here is we can do 1 to 4, right? So this is signifying that it is a range using the colon here, and we're going to get something from the first index to the 4th index. Now, when we print var3 here, what do you think we're going to get? We only get L. We missed the O. Now, the reason for this, I know a couple of weird things back to back. The reason for this is because the 4, it's non-inclusive. It's mean. It's not inclusive. So this means that we're going to get 1, 2, 3, 2, 4, but not including 4. So 1, 2, 3, which is ELL. Okay, we're going to come back to this to figure out how we can get the actual end if we wanted everything to the end. Because the next thing we're going to do is we're going to define var3 equals the length of a string. And you can do this by doing len and then brackets, kind of like we're printing something, and then we put in our string. And if we print this, we're going to get the length of var1, which is 5. Now, if you know what the next step is, then comment down below and let me know. But the next step here is what we could actually do before, is instead of saying up to 4, we can say the length of the string. Because if you notice here, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 is this, but 5, which is the length, is actually the end. It's the end of the string. So now if we get rid of this 4 and make it into len of var1, then we can save and run, and now we get LO. So the reason for that is, again, because it's starting from 1, and it's going to 5, because that's what the length is of R1, but it's not inclusive of 5. So it will go like 0, or 1, 2, 3, 4. It's less than 5 now. Now it gives up. All right, we have a couple more examples for strings here, and we don't actually need a variable for this, but we can kind of still see it just through like printing. But it's just how can we determine if something is in a string? So say we want to see if the letter n, or the string n, is in var1. We can simply type n, or the string n, is in var1. We can also change this to be var2 or var3 or anything like that. But right now we're going to say var2 is in, or we can say var2 is in var1. You can see if you hover over this, it'll actually tell you what it is. Whether it is friend, and this is Elo. So if we print this, we're going to get false. And false is actually called a new thing called a Boolean. A Boolean is something that is in every programming language, and it either means it is true or it is false. In some languages, it might be yes or no, but for the most part, it's true or false. So similarly to saying var2 is in var1, we can simply just say var2 is not in var1. And now if we print this, now we'll get true, because now we're saying friend is not in LO, which is true. But if we change this to say like hello, or LO is not in var1, we will get false, because LO is in var1, which we can confirm by removing the not and running it again and getting true. I know I went over that really quickly, but this video is starting to get long. Okay, the last thing we're going to talk about right here is a structured string. So you could type something like my name is, and then put an S with this percent sign, and then type and the year is %D. Now you can basically use these almost as pseudo variables for this string. So if you now type another percent sign and then brackets, and then what values you want for these in order. So if I put Jake and I put 2022, and then I print var7, I don't know why I named it var7, but there we go. Then if we print this, we're now going to get my name is Jake and the year is 2022. So even though I didn't put Jake here or 2022 here, it's actually getting input here because it is a parameterized string, or like a structured string that allows you to put these values into here, just based off of this. So if you had more and more of these, if it was like a long paragraph, you could basically have as many of these as you need. And then as long as they're in the correct order within these brackets, you can just keep like adding them as much as you want, separated by a comma, then it will create the string for you. All right, really quickly, let's go over numbers. So numbers are basically the exact same. You can define them the exact same as variables. So we can rename our var1 to be 3, for instance. And we can print var1. And let's see, we get our 3 here. All right, so another thing we can do here is if we do var2 equals, say, var1 plus var1. So we can add 3 and 3 together. We can now print var2, and we can get 6. So same with like a string, but this time you're just actually adding numbers. So it doesn't add them together. It doesn't make 33. It actually adds them because they're numbers. So another thing we can do is var2 equals var1 minus 2. And we can print this. So this will be 3 minus 2, which if we go here is a 1. So we can also multiply. Let's just change this to multiply. So the little star symbol. And if we run this, we get 6. Let's make this a 5, and we can run it again, and we get a 10 instead. So just to show that it's not the same thing getting printed twice here. So another thing we can actually do is divide, and you can do that with a /. And if you divide 5 divided by 2, that will be 2.5, and that is the output we get here. But say you don't want the remainder, so the 0.5, you can add another /, and it will actually get rid of the remainder here. So now it will just be, it'll always round down. So it will be a 2 now. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. The next video, we're actually going to go over user input and if-else statements, which are super, super powerful. So it'll be a lot of fun. Please feel free to drop a like down below. It's free and it really helps out the channel. And while you're down there, if you want to be notified for the next videos in this series, consider subscribing. It's also free. I hope to see you in the next video, and remember, never stop learning.